two different picks, there could be some wholesale change, and we already see an Aurelia ban.
I would like to see some wholesale change in Hylissang's decision-making, because if he gets Rakan again...
Harder to address in one day.
Not want to see the same things from yesterday. Nevertheless, we're into draft, gentlemen. GRX on the blue side, they've taken away Aurelia, they've taken away Akali, and the response, Urgot, Aatrox, and Rakan.
And this is becoming more and more of the thing we're seeing is either teams trading their preferred pick, ban of Urgot on blue side, expecting an Aatrox ban, or the red side team being stuck with maybe the new Triumvirate, maybe Alistar, Aatrox, and Urgot will be the required bans with where the meta is right now, because this does open up the tanks, especially on the top side.
And I do like the Fnatic, yeah, as you're saying, you know, when you ban out both the Urgot and the Aatrox, allows more options and more creative use in the top lane, which they've made the substitution specifically for.
But if we rewind to one of our pre-pick and ban discussions, this is something you might expect with Soaz. This is indicative that Bwipo will be following his shoes and playing tanks, because for Soaz, opting out of a skill matchup makes sense. For Bwipo, if you're looking at his solo queue especially, we know he can play the carries, but can Fnatic play around his carry play? A little bit more up in the air on the world stage.
Updating with the current picks here, Stitch has been my favorite player on GRX. He has been an outstanding carry for this team. Very good stats, playing offensively as well. He always is looking for as much uptime on an AD carry as possible. Them locking in an early Kaisa, I do like, even though we've seen so many teams hesitant, you know, to go with this, you know, with Xayah rising in priority and Varus being a very good answer for lane.
But the eye test here in bot lane will be so interesting, because if you think of the two games so far, the shift in bot lane was the biggest difference. We saw Rekkles and Hylissang build up a big CS advantage over Rakara and Aframu against 100 Thieves. Then Jackie Love had a great game the following game with nothing changing. Xayah and Rakan, both games from Fnatic. Let's see if they actually choose to attack bot lane, as it's very early Braum priority, mostly to allow the Ornn to do his thing in teamfight.
And that's almost certainly going to be Bwipo doing as many Ornn horns as is possible.
Yeah.
Deficio specifically made us say that if Bwipo is playing that Ornn, every time the ultimate's available, he'll throw it down. I feel like we're seeing Braum and Thresh a little more today than we have in the previous days of the World's group stage here. And of course, for Fnatic, which direction do they go with the ADC? Xayah is still open and available. I'm not sure if you want it into the Kaisa Thresh, and GRX will secure that Shen.
I mean, Kaisa also opens up a lot of pocket picks that people around the world will play. Uzi's Vayne is always a possibility into this matchup. The Tristana is, of course, as reckless as Spirit Animal, and is very playable into the Kaisa. You've got a lot of options here. Where will they go? Will this also be the Sivir, another Rekkles pick that we've seen once already at Worlds?
Yeah, and we also have seen Uzi actually use a very similar strategy to Rekkles, you know, getting early attack speed, shoving the lane very quickly, trying to push in, and this is Fnatic already setting up a very good 5-on-5, you know, team composition here. Bwipo with the Ornn, as you said, very easy engage, and since there's no Braum to block the ultimates coming through, Fnatic really have the go button advantage.
A pile-in comp to be true, at least 3 picks into the pick and ban.
Well, let's see how GRX decide to respond, because I have been fairly impressed with GRX's opening stage games. If you think back to the 2 previous performances, they have not been rolled over and absolutely obliterated for the first 15 to 20 to 25 minutes. And I think if Fnatic are hoping for a similar trend, then this composition of, you know, team fighting and scaling with the Ornn, with the Braum, with the Sivir can work into their favor. Mid lane bans taken off the table with Syndra and LeBlanc, and there is the Skarner denied from MT.
And it's pretty clear on the GRX side, we haven't even really talked about, it's top lane Shen into Ornn. It's very much going to be a Stitch-focused composition, and this is something that he excelled on back in his Samsung Galaxy days a few years ago, probably watching on the Gen G results of this tournament with interest. Very much going to be a bot lane where Kaisa and Thresh go pretty even, all things considered, against the Sivir and Braum. And Stitch in teamfights has turned it on more often than not at this tournament.
Yeah, I really do approve of this strategy from GRX. Probably their best chance at upsetting Fnatic here. We've already seen Stitch using the killer instinct very early and offensively. Now he'll have some extra support when he does go in, get to bring some teammates with him, and, you know, maybe have the lantern for a way out if he goes in, gets the kill, and needs a reset.
Of course, going to be jumping into phase 2 in just a moment. Those last 2 bans were the Galio and the Skarner. And I can see that the players have just dropped out the lobby, so we'll give you guys an update in a moment or two.
Yeah, it was just that the Galio ban, I believe, was supposed to be an Olaf ban, so they're resetting that and going to get the correct ban in.
So a bit more time, a bit more table setting then before we can get into this one. But already, Fnatic answering one thing we threw out, saying, let's see some new stuff already. Sivir, good sign that new stuff is a rolling.
Well, let's talk about the jungle champion pool then, because Skarner taken off, Olaf taken out as well. You know, what direction do these guys want to go? Is, you know, Sejuani, you think? Do you go Nocturne? Do you go Camille? Like, what direction do you think, Kobe?
Yeah, Sejuani's really fallen off since...
Not a thing. Definitely not a thing.
Since the last nerfs. So probably
Cross that one out there, Trevor.
Be the case. But there are things like Zac that we've seen that if you really wanted a super hard engage, long range engage, tanky champion to start it off, that is a possibility floating around.
I always worry, though, that teams will only remember the mid to late game, Zac, and forget the many, many games in the past where Zac was invaded again and again, or if all your lanes weren't pushing, the enemy jungler kind of finds Zac and gets a free meal either on some Raptors or on the enemy champion, so it's a very risky pick, but when it pays off, it does pay off in the biggest way.
Definitely does have to be scared, especially of the Olaf in the early game. And we'll see if we get back into Champ Select with a similar setup.
Well, I can see the picks and bans. It is running through the draft. Just as a quick update if you're joining us. There was a incorrect champion ban. It was Galio instead of Olaf during Phase 2. But just looking at the player faces and reactions, pretty stern, serious looks on the side of GRX. They are 0-2 in this group. And Fnatic with Dylan Falco standing behind them. Big smiles, a lot of energy, a lot of positivity, and I know that's something that Bwipo definitely also brings to the table. He has a bit of an infectious enthusiasm. Sometimes it's fantastic, sometimes it's distracting, but of course he's starting today for Fnatic.
That's especially funny too because, you know, as a North American viewer during the European LCS, when he first was brought on the scene, one of the biggest and most impressionable things that we got from Bwipo was a lot of his trash talk.
Yes.
That really stuck with it, and we definitely enjoyed that. So he's definitely a lively character, and and very good speaker as well.
And his carry play on solo queue was something that was drawing a lot of attention. He had so many challenger points over in Korean solo queue. So I wanted to see the carries, understand that in pro play, your decision-making and where you need to be for the team is different. You're going to see the Ryze picked up here, likely going to be that blind mid lane pick for Caps.
Yeah, that's going to give them some more options for later in the game. You know, you can send Ryze to the side lane very effectively as well, use the Realm Warp.
Kobe, what does the GRX draft do? Can you walk me through these big, burly tanks with defensive utility and a Kaisa?
Yeah, so now the only thing they have to be worried about, I guess, would be the dreaded Nocturne ultimate that has become a little bit...
They could have one.
Exactly, a little bit of a joke, but whenever you see all these globals, that is actually one of the things that has come up as a decent counter. You know, when Nocturne Ultimate is on, neither Shen nor Galio, unless they are standing close enough to one of their teammates to actually have their own vision of them, can use those ults.
And while we're chuckling about it, the enemy team, if they pick in Nocturne, actually both the Galio and the Shen don't really have an ultimate button if they haven't pressed it already. So there is actually a huge amount of value there. Wait and see if Fnatic will index into a Nocturne. It is a possibility. It is open.
Couple seconds later, I'm holding my breath to see what Broxah decides to do. He has played Nocturne 3 times this year already, won 2 of those games, and in the last few seconds will pivot to one of the champions that he made a name for himself on in his debut on the Fnatic roster with Lee Sin. Kobe, I see a cheeky grin. What do you think of the Fnatic composition now it's locked in?
I was very excited when I started researching coming into Worlds and saw a lot of these players start to re-pick Lee Sin up. And Broxah was one of the guys that had put a lot of solo queue games on the champion in the boot camp for Worlds, so I'm excited to see him on the big stage here. You can make a lot of creative plays in the early game.
And I think we were a few highlight plays away from power pick Lee Sin. So far this tournament's been answers to Olaf for that skill matchup that does tend towards the Lee Sin side. This is into Camille, another skill matchup, and it's a bit of a bold choice. There was many different ways they could go, but this is the sort of thing that could blow the game open in Fnatic's favor.
One of the big strengths of Lee Sin is, of course, the mobility of this champion, and mobility very good against Camille jungle. If you're facing it, everyone always talks about how scary it is to have the hook shot come out of Fog of War and have a lot of burst damage. Lee Sin is one of the champions that does have so much mobility. He can actually work around it. So this early game matchup with Broxah as well as Empty is going to be so exciting, considering they're just subbing this guy right back
And
in.
I'm so interested to see which keystone we get. out of the Lee Sin. If you look over to Kaisa, one of those aficionados of the Lee Sin, it was the Dark Harvest. And if it's going to be a bloody game, and Fnatic has had quite a few of those with kills coming thick and fast on both sides, you pick up those souls, and that burst damage from the Lee Sin gets to critical levels.
We're about to load into the Rift and find out the answer, Papasmithy. GRX and Fnatic starting off their game. This is the last for Group D, when all 4 teams from Group D will then complete their second round robin next Wednesday. GRX looking for their first win, and listen to those Fnatic chants. A lot of support for Rekkles and crew, and that support is just as disappointed as we are, ladies and gentlemen. Here is a tension-building pause, but I did see Dark Harvest for Broxah, so some hopeful team fights in the Fnatic camp.
And honestly, that Invictus Gaming game, I think Deficio said it best, just bloody on both sides. They weren't thinking about rotations, not the sort of game that every Korean analyst would approve of, but the sort of game where Dark Harvest does benefit. It's been mentioned on the cast already, but both allies and enemies perishing does give you those Dark Harvest stacks and can be so big when it comes to getting access to the 150 stacks and thus the reliable burst damage as the game goes on.
We do have to mention with Dark Harvest, every time it comes up, you know, a lot of people just remember the big damage for late game. In the early game, it is more difficult to use because you only have 20 seconds after picking up one of those Dark Harvest souls to get the damage off on an empowered attack.
Well, let's see if Broxah can make it work or not. Hylissang was making his way through to that Dragon Pit. And one of the things that Fnatic became fairly well known for in the ULCS was some very creative level 1s. And we've seen them happening sporadically throughout the World's group stage here, but Hilly and Rekkles standing in front of Koala and Stitch.
And Braum and Sivir is actually quite good at level 1. Sivir can take the W for the auto attack reset to try and get a quicker stun. Here though, they're being chased off with superior numbers from GRX, who've decided to push in and actually get a free start for Empty on the red buff. They're even going to pull for him on the Camille, try and really push this Camille into a strong early game.
And viewers at home might wonder, why that spot? Why around that entrance towards the red buff area of GRX do we always see these level 1s? It's all about getting a ward to see the jungler on the Scuttle Crab when that spawns just after 2 minutes. It's very much about jungle pathing, and you really want it as late as possible.
Again, Camille, very effective on level 2 because of the range of a hook shot. This ward here is going to alert them to the path here from Empty though, and then he'll just move on up to the Scuttle Crab, but his location has been given away.
That means no further shenanigans. Rekkles and Hilly, Wave someone pushing away for them for now, so Koala playing the zoning game. And Caps will be playing the Ryze, that third unique champion in 3 games. Papasmithy, we were talking about expectations for Fnatic. They've had the substitution, and now we see a slightly different flavor draft. And now we need to judge them on execution, how well they can get through this laning phase and build up what is going to be a fantastic team fight later in the game.
And the thing about GRX is, while they'll be able to help out in skirmishes later, pre-6 they don't have the sort of ultimates that guarantee Hex ultimatum into the hero's entrance and Shen joining them. They have to be very careful around cooldowns. GRX with ults up, extremely powerful and super hard to outplay. If you bait out the ultimate, we're talking 2-3 minute cooldowns on some of these big game-changing ultimates. That's where Fnatic will really want to play.
Yeah, a lot of classic combinations here on the field that we will see later, but as of right now, if we check back in on the early game, Broxah, because Lee Sin, he went straight from his red up to Krug's first before getting Scuttle, and Empty went for the possible gank on bottom side. Broxah is a full camp ahead right now with a lot more CS on this Lee Sin, has been able to rush through, so we'll see if he just cleans out the bottom side of his camp as well.
Seems like a bit of a full clear style just to get access to that ultimate. That's when the playmaking really kicks up for the Lee Sin. Started off different, I feel like Lee Sin, when we think of it back in the Insect days, getting the kills pre-6, but the farm up to 6 became more and more common over time.
And those are the small costs of just looking for possible ganks, right? Having your path go from red bottom into the Scuttle Crab takes a little bit of time and is going to sacrifice a little bit of experience, but it does position Empty very well for a possible dive onto Bwipo.
All right, let's take a look. Level 3 for Bwipo. He's got flash available to him, and he needs to do this perfectly. The Spirit's Refuge comes down. That's a 2-man knocker. The Bellow's Breath is doing well. PK is down to 50 HP. He flashes away from Bwipo. Empties the first target. He flashes the wall. Caps comes chasing. First blood to Fnatic. PK's running for his life. Can he get the execute? That's the question.
Gonna try and run away here. There's no one collapsing at the moment, so the Shen should get away. The double knock-up was so big from Bwipo, but it was the execution from GRX. They stacked the CC. They're both in range of the same knock-up, and then from there, Caps was able to feast.
Yeah, let's take another look at it, because on your screen minimap, teleport just used in the mid lane by Galio. So we know that there is a teleport discrepancy right now, and this is Caps gonna start immediately channeling. As soon as they go in and they commit to it, that is the trigger for Bwipo. Get the double knock-up, teleport starts coming through, Caps arrives, and they're able to pick up the first blood.
The stacking of the CC was so big. If I was Shen, I would have walked past the turret and then taunted back towards the minion line as Bwipo reacts to that one being fired up about it. Koala walking up here.
Well, let's find out if they can get the hook. That lands onto the shield. Hylissang gets pulled forward, and May loses life. He flashes away to stay alive. Here comes Bwipo. Candy's going to be the target of the duo as Broxah joins the fight. Boomerang blade flies across, and Broxah kills secured. Now Koala's the target. He gets sent packing. In comes Empty. A 4-man stack of Fnatic. They're diving the tower, looking for the third. Stitch now is the further follow-up. Caps needs to find a room prison. They've lost one in reply. Defensive flash. Caps and Broxah trying to run him down. Sonic wave. If it finds the target, Broxah brings it home!
And Fnatic are dominating the whole game just like that, Trevor. Broxah with the stylish finish, but honestly, the whole beginning of this game was big plays from Bwipo.
It's not a literary classic, but it's a tale of two teleports. The mid lane teleport to get back to lane for the Galio. The two teleports from Fnatic have made the top and bot lane open up for them.
They're paying it forward here. Caps uses his teleport to protect Bwipo top, and Bwipo gets to pay it forward to the bottom lane, comes in with some kills. And my goodness, we could show replays of that Broxah ward jump into Sonic Wave multiple times.
Bro status Bwipo confirmed here. Awesome stuff in the early game. We'll start the replay of that teleport. The only one available of any member ends up being the big move because it started off with a nice slick play from GRX.
They definitely did. Acer Predator replay right here starts with Koala flashing in. He landed the play. They get plenty of damage here down onto Hylissang, but he flashes out, and that just closed the door with Bwipo's teleport. Comes in full health, plenty of mana, and they start to rack up the kill.
The creeping dread of that teleport channel was, I'm sure, there for all three members of GRX who were present. Caps got the blue buff, if you're wondering, from that kill in the top lane, still wears it here. They may take one casualty on the dive, but Broxah cool under pressure. Kaisa had his sniper cues on earlier this week, so does Broxah.
Yeah, Stitch tried to dodge it right there, running straight up, but unable to escape. And we've already had some good attitude here from Bwipo so far.
100% kill participation. GRX targeted him. He countered that play. The tale of two teleports in Chapter 2 of the story leads Fnatic to a 2,000 gold lead before 8 minutes.
I'll be watching EULCS next year for some Bwipo face, because that seems like a quality meme just based on 5 minutes of play.
Yeah, he's already got 2 on the board. Broxah, though, might want to create some for himself. He's now level 6, access to the big burst damage and knockback in his dragon kick.
And we'll pretend we didn't see that faceplant nevertheless. Yeah, access to level 6. And the thing is, Broxah is very, very comfortable making those very aggressive, very proactive plays when you see the prowess of his solo laners like Bwipo and Caps. We've seen it time and time again. Fnatic will also get an early Ocean Drake, the best Drake for this stage in the game.
And it sounds like a bit of just a standard point, but especially with this composition where all three laners, carry laners here, need mana to push, it actually is really important for Sivir, Ryze, and the Ornn and topside. Broxah's back, remember that ultimate?
He is indeed. There's a fissure in the ground and such an easy kill. The first one's picked up by Rekkles. Hylissang will donate his life, and it's Koala that picks it up. While that fight is going on, there's a duel in the top lane. Bwipo's being run down. He's got a massive HP disadvantage.
Yeah, Bwipo just went to go interrupt the Shen so that he would not arrive down there. That actually helped out Broxah and allowed them to finish off. Stitch right after the shield, and no Shen does arrive. In the end, it costs him some health, but Ocean Drake will regenerate him right back up.
And throw out what we were saying about a skill matchup in the jungle when there's 4 kills already onto the Lee Sin. We're getting into 1 rotation territory on the Camille.
Yeah, it does remove some of the skill because just a Dragon Kick can take 50% of your HP, but let's take another look at how it happened. He gets the execute damage there. Rekkles actually picks up the last hit for the kill. On your mini-map, you can see the Ornn ultimate is what Bwipo used, and that is going to be on cooldown, but definitely a successful stop to the Shen teleport.
And there we go. It's still that 3,000 gold lead before 10 minutes. First item's already starting to come through. And for Fnatic, it could not have gone better. The counterplay and then the proactive dive themselves established a lead in every single one of their lanes. And for GRX, they've got to be very, very careful to not let this get further because they can just get destroyed.
But a lot of the inevitabilities about where this mid-game was going with ultimates for GRX are thrown out when it's a 3,000 gold lead for Fnatic pre-10 minutes. That is an insane gold lead for this far into a game. Now, even if you get off the picture-perfect combos, the item disadvantage will, at minimum, slow down the first kill and allow Fnatic to be in position.
And as we've been saying, a lot of the money is on Broxah. He has a fully completed warrior enchantment, upgraded boots, and more money to spend on an extra health crystal. Now, warrior enchantment, if you know, gives 60 attack damage. The Tiamat over here for Camille, 25. So just in the straight up offensive stats right there, he will win the 1v1. And he's got extra money to spend on tenacity and you know, extra things. So
he kills you quicker and he takes longer to die.
It's definitely going to be very
succinct, Trevor. I like it. I like it.
Very difficult for Empty here to pull off those plays on Camille. But let's try and bring it back and go hard mode right now. The difficult scenario for this game, how will GRX get back? Actually, it's going to start in the mid lane. Candy has to flash out.
And he does escape with his life. Empty was waiting in the wings. And I'm going to go back to that question, Kobe. The fact that GRX are still holding on to their towers is very early. If you look at the HP, it hasn't fallen yet. The longer they can delay those tier 1s going down, the less impactful this gold lead will feel like.
And remember what we were talking about earlier, they do have very strong synergies in their ultimates. If you can bring together the AoE of the Galio ultimate on top of Camille and allow Kaisa to get in there and pick off the low target during the knockup, that is where you want to try and make your big plays. However, they're facing a Fnatic that have a very big early lead.
And usually a Lee Sin with 4 kills might not be ideal kill distribution, but in a game like this, wherever Broxah goes, doesn't matter what wards he's walking over. He's so powerful as an individual that he both represents a dive on the side of the jungle he's on and also can 1v1. He's here threatening that dive. They want this turret.
Papasmithy, you say the word dive, and Fnatic, they want to make it happen. The Sonic Wave didn't find the target, though. Enough pressure and a numbers advantage to get tower first blood and unlock some more freedom on the map.
Yeah, wherever Broxah goes, you know, GRX cannot afford to fight around that area of the map. They would have to use some of these, you know, global and semi-global ultimates to try and make a trade somewhere else. It's very hard for them to find a foothold at the moment.
And the more open the map is in terms of map length with turrets down, the less likely you're going to get a wombo combo off because there's so much more space for Fnatic to play around, to chase, to play and make, and that means that once again, the chance of everyone piling in with the Galio and Shen becomes lower.
All right, now a little bit easier mode is what is the next step for Fnatic? They took the bottom turret so they can swap Rekkles up to the top side. He is on Sivir, plenty of attack speed. He's already finished the Storm Razor in addition to his Berserker Greaves, so he can just head up here with Bwipo, push in on the top side, and continue the momentum.
All right, Koala manages to get a very good flay and forced a flash as well. Broxah didn't fancy further chase, but summon a spell, list Thresh, and all that burst damage makes him a juicy target. There is Rekkles starting to chip away at this top outer turret, and every time I look at the minimap, I'm trying to see where the grouping is. GRX trying to respond. A potential dive, but Fnatic aren't sending out.
But what I want to see from Fnatic is the threat into turrets rather than actually making risky plays. They're so far ahead, it's more about the threat, but here's the bar.
All right, Broxah gets the Dragon's Rage. Koala's the target. He gets knocked up by the Ornn Horn. Here comes Rekkles. His ultimate's already used, and Empty's killed Hilly. Fnatic are somewhat split. It's a fight on multiple fronts. Candy gets a good taunt. Caps is running for his life. Flash may be needed, not just yet. Now Bwipo, he's going to flash the wall. Fnatic, that was terrible. GRX are running running circles around Fnatic. Bwipo gets chunked up by the Winds of War, running backwards. Fnatic may consider a turn to side against it in the end. Only Hilly goes down.
The gold lead spares their blushes a little bit, but Fnatic is biting off more than they can chew. They could have gone for a much more measured play where Broxah just comes through the triangle brush, throws out a Q and threatens a dive. Instead, they hit a Q, the Lee Syndrome starts, and unfortunately kills go the way of GRX.
You have to be careful about giving over too much money to this GRX composition. Again, remember the big ultimates they have? If you're in the condensed area like the jungle here, it is easier to use the big ultimate. Here comes Galio. They completely collapse on Hylissang. They also use the Kaisa ultimate and pick up a kill for Empty here. On the other side, Caps, after the taunt is used, he knows there's no more crowd control to stop his Ryze ult, so he gets out with Realm Warp.
One might say a little too hyphy.
Yep.
Bringing up an ult term. Fnatic need to just slow this down a little and once again go back. Make sure they hold on to this 3,500, 4,000 gold lead. You can see the top outer turret is down to 50% already. And with this Sivir's wave pushing ability, Fnatic can just play the dominoes game, knocking over the objective.
And if you're the coach, Dylan Falco, and you're doing a VOD review of that previous play, he might just present an alternate scenario where, if you remember, it's Ornn and the Sivir pushing in. That's a lot of threat and wave clear. The Shen provides nothing, even if his duo lane is there to join him. You throw out an Ornn ultimate just to zone, and you just do turret damage. The structure was what you were focused on. The kill is what they gave up.
Well, they're at it again, and the lasso does catch Broxah, but he doesn't want what he caught there as they're able to finish off the blue buff. Caps does take it in the end, and you can see GRX are trying to fight off Fnatic with these control wards in their own jungle, but they just don't have the stats to be able to actually take the fight there, and it allows Fnatic to continue to push in and take more.
From here, though, we're going to see them clear out some vision. This is solo gold onto Rekkles, already going to be pushing towards his second big item here. I imagine Azil. I watch enough Rekkles games to see that. Look at me. What a prophet I am.
Well researched, Papasmithy. Take a look at some of the other items, though. Broxah's just picked himself up a Phage, another Ruby Crystal. The Iceborne Gauntlet is sitting in Bwipo's back pockets, and of course, Caps is trying to work his way up towards that Seraph. So a few big-ticket items have been completed. Fortunately, on the side of GRX, that is also true. PK and Stitch with their first items. Candy's got that Roa stacking. So, you know, effective combat stats are looking a little better, but it's still a difficult situation for GRX, and they need to play for time.
But on the other side, Fnatic need to keep up the tempo. In a position like this, you want to keep threatening and see which ults you can glean from GRX. You can't always wait for the ideal play. If you force out any of these Wombo ultimates, the double globals here, or a big engage ultimate, then you have so much more breathing room in the cooldown windows to push, push, push. And speaking of push, we see the Rift Herald started around 50% HP.
All right, Rekkles and Hylissang, they're going to jump in on this one. Empty decides to go forward, puts down the baby cage. In comes Candy. Everybody's stacked up in a 5v5. Death Sentence connects for Koala. There's the chase forward for PK. Empty's running for his life. GRX realize they can't win this fight. They back away. Fnatic get the prize.
And after that, Fnatic are going to have a very big window where they don't have to worry about those big AoE ultimates. Galio, Camille, and Shen all used here, and the Thresh box to try and disengage. With the rewards of the Rift Herald, Fnatic trying to knock down the mid turret here.
Wave clear so limited on the side of GRX, just the Q coming through from Galio mostly. There is the Rift Herald, they needed to tank it up, and Rekkles should be able to get the turret right now.
Oh, every single time Koala throws out that Death Sentence, I'm holding my breath. He's trying to lasso a Fnatic member in, but Fnatic will secure the third outer tower, extend the gold lead to 5,000, and also pick up a second Ocean Drake on the way out. This is a gigantic lead with the team composition that can utilize it to knock down inner turrets.
And my impression is that the Fnatic playstyle and draft here is very much trying to play new meta. No longer are we in the meta where you put down all the wards and you try to just control the map. Now having people like a full kill Broxah allows you to exert pressure. That means that if GRX go to the river, that's kind of new territory for them. They're not really strong enough to peek their heads forward, and Fnatic actually control about 65% of this map.
And the ideal scenario, the setup here for Fnatic, is to put your marksman in the mid lane, Sivir, very, very good wave clear, so Rekkles can just go there, throw out the boomerangs, instantly clear that wave, and you have your Ryze on top side, your Ornn on the bottom side with teleports about to come up. Get your 1-3-1 in order first, and you start to take away a lot of the territory that GRX feels safe in. As you slowly close in these wards and move up your own, then they have a lot harder time transitioning between these objectives.
The trickiest thing actually is the lane assignment for the top lane against the Ryze, because it's not a teleport Kaisa, who you could maybe have just hang back, queue a couple of waves, not going to get every minion wave, getting a lot of solo experience. Instead, the Kaisa can only stay for a while, back away. That will increase the time that Fnatic can invade for vision. Has to be shallow. You can see where the red wards are around the Baron area, but Baron hasn't spawned. This does usually have the flow-on effect of the game, calming down a little bit. The easiest objectives have been taken down, but once the Baron comes on, that's where you can start to be a bit more aggressive topside as Fnatic.
Well, you won't have to wait long, Papasmithy. Baron
I'm not
is
very
on
patient
the
anymore.
way. About 40 seconds here left on that one. And Fnatic, again, like you're talking about, nobody can really answer the Ryze 1v1. So GRX are trying to come up with, it looks like a little bit sneakier move here where they send more people, try and surprise him, and get a quick kill, which would be the way to try and get some momentum back in this game and open up some area to work with.
And a quick kill is definitely on the menu from the item here from Ryze. Has the Spellbinder. Second definite situational item on Ryze, but it's extra Nikes for someone who's already quick. Speaking of those Nikes, Cap's going to wave clear for now, but it's all about, like you say, the one kill, then try to start baiting some of those globals, then it's pretty much plain sailing for Fnatic.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the Spellbinder, but take a look. Rapid Fire Cannon picked up Black Cleaver for Broxah as well. So 2-item spikes sitting on the side of Fnatic and 1.5 as it were.
Being
for
generous
GRX.
over there.
You know, it's those windows of opportunity. It's those windows where you actually have statistical advantages from your gold lead. And that's what Fnatic find themselves in. And they're already pushing that vision, Kobe, you talked about, into that left-hand quadrant around the Baron.
Right. So GRX are going to have one good shot at trying to answer here, where they have to commit with it and go all in, use all of these ultimates in succession to try and catch someone from Fnatic out. So that means on Fnatic's mind, one of the #1 things should be slightly kiting back so they don't get hit with this knockup of the Galio ultimate, or they try and protect the person that Camille goes after with the Hextech ultimatum. If they can just do that, then they can re-engage afterwards, and you'll see them take over.
Sidewave control wasn't one of the strong points of Fnatic yesterday, or even in their first victory. The gold leads, though, showing about 1,500 on mid and bot lane. Pretty indicative of the game against 100 Thieves. Bwipo walked topside looking for engage, but that's just a solo kill.
Now you see him, now you know! Broxah moves in with the Lee Sin and finishes off the enemy jungler. There is no smite here for a smite steal. They have overwhelming odds, and they started it up!
All right, so PK's going to interrupt Bwipo. There's a 4-man Fnatic onto Baron. Take a look at Candy coming in from the river. This is going to be a 4-on-3 for now. Baron's down to 4,000. Death Sentence doesn't find a target. Cap's in the back of the pit. This will be a smite fight, but only for Fnatic. Secured by Broxah. Now GRX trying to do something on the reply. Koala takes down Hilly. Keep your eyes on Rekkles and Cap. They take the round wall. They're going to follow Stitch. Broxah's looking for Koala, and there should be a wipe. Stitch gets obliterated with 2 spells. And Fnatic get Baron, get the kills, and they are absolutely in control.
Yep, they already have minion waves in place, Trevor, so they could just get right to pushing on these turrets. Rekkles is ready to take it down.
Only one frontliner there in Candy, couldn't control space for enough, and Stitch ended up behind the pit. No chance for GRX. There goes the inner turret. We'll see if they actually push it further at all. Seems like the answer is no.
Inner turret middle, inner turret top. The gold lead is 10,000 at 22 minutes. And gentlemen, yesterday we had one hell of a fast day. Average game time around 28 minutes. Today we might beat that record with some of the results that we've had.
Thank Mr. Broxah, Trevor, because this Lee Sin, 7 kills now. Let's take a look at how he's able to manufacture this pick all himself.
That's 1,100 health on empty. That's 0.
He just saw him barely on that ward walking, hits the Sonic Wave. As we said, plenty of damage to back it up. And here, Galio ultimate is used to try and cover most of the pit. But you see 3 members of Fnatic actually hugged that back wall, didn't get hit with the knock-up. And as Stitch even was able to use his ult to get in for the 1 kill, he wasn't able to get away. Caps uses the Realm Warp. And you know Broxah's having fun. This is the dream of junglers in a professional game. To be able to have the majority of the kills on your team as a jungler is so rare.
Well, Fnatic looking to break the base now. There were 7 people in the pit, but only 1 smite, so definitely not the Baron issues there were yesterday. There's the Sivir ult.
Well, let's see. How did GRX handle this? It's such an insurmountable task Fall of the Forge God is thrown down by Bwipo. The secondary cost is interrupted. Inhibitor turret falls. Glacial Fissure comes down as the boomerang blades and the ricochets and the overloads are rat-a-tat-tatting, making GRX go splat. The inhibitor falls. The kills are coming in. And the massive minion wave is pouring onto the Nexus. Fnatic bounced back from their defeat yesterday with the substitute with the minions to kill Stitch. Fnatic finish in style, taking down GRX. Busan goes mad, and Fnatic finish 2-1.
Rekkles rips off the headset to the proactive team, the spoils. In the 2018 meta, they blew apart GRX and make the game yesterday just a mere memory for the Fnatic faithful.
Right before this game, we heard from Invictus Gaming jungler Ning that Fnatic is the scariest opponent that he thinks he will face in this group. And they definitely made a good case for it here in their 24-minute victory over GRX.
Earlier in the game, Papasmithy, you talked about the Broxah face memes. I'm going to pivot that story. Ladies and gentlemen, get a photo of Broxah's face. Share that on social media, and maybe Broxah's Lee Sin prowess will bless your solo queue games in future, because that was a stunning performance across the map.
Every Fnatic fan is feeling the mum get the camera moment now. Just take a picture of the team with their names drowning out all of the other sounds in Busan. Wonderful performance from Fnatic. Puts them on the straight and narrow as they end their first round robin 2-1.
And spare a thought for GRX, who made a play early, got punished, and then were simply picked apart. Fnatic, they picked up that win. We're going to head to the analyst desk to break down exactly how they did it.
Thank you very much, QuickShot. Fnatic absolutely dismantled GRX in this game here to move to 2-1.
I was have a seizure? I was
Fnatic
and the air was GRX.
That's how Mark dismantles anything, right? Just punching it to oblivion.
I can't actually fight it.
It's kind of what happened in this game, though. MasterCard player of the game going to Broxah, who played a heavy role in the dismantling of GRX.
And the thing is, you know, I had some questions about the Lee Sin. I know it's like a signature Broxah pick, but I saw the Galio, I saw the Shen. I was like, Nocturne would be perfect here just to dismantle this composition. But Broxah was like, nah, man, we're playing early game. Teams up with Bwipo in the top lane and just goes absolutely insane, dumpsters GRX.
Yeah, I mean, he took total control of this game. He was everywhere. Bwipo was like, no, can't make that time.
It's interesting, right? The idea of the Lee Sin, because Zale, we were kind of talking about who we thought would win this matchup after Champ Select was locked in, and I indexed very heavily into the kind of reactive setup that GRX had built, thinking that, hey, an aggressive jungler like Lee Sin could get punished by a Galio, by a Shen, by the multiple TPs on the side of GRX. That's not what happened at all.
Yeah, and I mean, I think one of the ways that he got around that was by often attacking the globals, you know, going over to where they are, making sure that they have kind of full lane control, and it's harder for the Shen and harder for the Galio to really be able to respond.
I mean, all the lanes have so much setup on both sides that, like, Lee Sin actually works fantastically as a counter ganker as well. Everyone talked about his aggressive plays, but he's actually also a very reactive champion. If you're safeguarding to someone getting attacked, you can do so much work, and that's actually how they used the first two plays were reactive, and then from then on, Fnatic absolutely turned the heat up.
It's also just like a change-up of styles. You know, back in domestically, a lot of Fnatic's victories were based off of their team fighting prowess. And when you see a composition being locked in, like so much Kaisa priority, the fact that it's a Galio, that it's a Shen, and just to say, no, we're not even going to give you a chance to make it to team fight. We're going to end this in the lane phase. I think, yeah, that game ended relatively early, but it was really over like the first 8 minutes of the game, just done.
And honestly, like you can see, like from this game and from the 100 Thieves Fnatic game, the Fnatic are clearly a cut above both the other two teams in this group, right? Like they looked so dominant in this win, so dominant in their win over 100 Thieves, and it really does make it start to feel like just that two-horse race.
This is the group of death. Like after we've seen like the collapse of like Group B and everything like this, like it is now, this is the group of death. You have Invictus Gaming, you have Fnatic, and I don't know if anyone else has a shot at it.
Right, all of the other groups right now have ties somewhere in the standings. This is the only one that is definitively 1, 2, 3, 4.
That's why I'm not quite sure it's a group of death,
Yeah.
just because like I don't think any of the two teams underneath them have a chance or just like should have a chance.
We need to redefine group of death. My understanding is that there's more teams that are capable of getting out than there are slots or tickets available. You guys seem to think that it's like
The strongest overall group is how I would define the group of death.
I think
to me, this is definitely not the strongest overall group because Fnatic and IG are clearly a cut above 100 Thieves and GRX. I don't think that I give them much of a chance in the group. Whereas when you look at Group B, people talked about that perhaps being like a number of teams that are at a higher level.
by either definition, I still wouldn't say this is it, just because I don't think GRX or 100 Thieves.
GRX is like, this is the group of death. We just got killed by
I mean, getting murdered doesn't make it the group of death. Maybe deserving to get out and not being able to because it's so competitive, like to your definition, I think would be fair. But like this feels like the most delineated group where it's like, here's IG, here's Fnatic, here's 100 Thieves, here's GRX, and it feels very cut and dry.
One final conversation I want to have is around substitutions. Both teams making a substitution coming into this game. For Fnatic, it's Bwipo, and for GRX, it's Empty. Empty, understandably a more aggressive jungler, came back to bite him in this game as some of those early plays were punished. But for Bwipo, I think there was a lot of sentiment around why is this happening, because Soaz was a top performer for the team, even in the loss yesterday. So I want to put some context maybe to why we're seeing him come out on the stage here today.
Yeah, and EU fans, get behind Bwipo because he just had an incredible performance. But it's pretty clear that in all of Fnatic's interviews that they're not just looking at the group stage. They're like, no, we're top 4. We're going all the way. And at some point, you do need to put in Bwipo to give him that stage time, to get him warmed up. And I still feel that even Fnatic are saying that Soaz is the superior top laner, or the key starting top laner, if you will, because they started him in the game against Invictus Gaming versus starting Bwipo in the game against GRX, which was obviously a big softball. So I think this is just about getting him warm and ready.
Oh, yeah, and from talking to Deficio and VODS and some of the E guys, they really do see Bwipo as more of the guy who is going to play more aggressive in lane. Not necessarily that it has to be him on aggressive picks, but you can put him on a tank and he's going to look to fight, he's going to look to create pressure, and so as maybe the more consistent, more kind of stable laner, but Bwipo certainly can create pressure and can make action happen.
If I'm an EU fan, I'm just looking at this like, great, we have 2 fantastic top laners on this team, and it's about what's going to work better in that individual performance, but both guys have looked fantastic thus far into the tournament.
Substitutions as a whole is one thing that I want to get into, so remind me later in the day, perhaps continue that discussion. For now, though, Shox is standing by for an interview with Bwipo himself.
Thank you very much, guys. I'm here with Bwipo. Let's just get it out of the way. I just want to say thanks, Mr. Broxah.
Absolutely.
All right, just say it.
Thanks, Mr. Broxah.
Okay, there we go for the internet. Now, on a more serious note, this was a very high-pressure game for you. First World, Soaz had been having an awesome performance so far, and you get to play, and then you see 2 GRX players approaching your top lane. So talk me through that, and just talk me through your first game at Worlds.
So honestly, I don't feel like there was too much pressure on me. I think that most people are trying to compare me and Soaz, whereas, we're both trying to win, and we're both trying to do what we can to actually increase the odds of us winning. So I think that rather than putting us against each other, we should be added up together if possible. And the main reason I played today is not because he had, because of his performance, because it was absolutely amazing, right? He's been playing extraordinarily well for both games on stage and practice. It was more that we felt like this game was the most appropriate to put me in so that I could be ready for the later stages of the group stage, as well as best of 5 if we get there. That said, when they approached my turret, I was calling caps, maybe you can TP, can you back off, maybe look for TP, and then as soon as they went for it, I realized, wait, this is really bad, like it's really free, and then I started laughing a lot, so I feel kind of bad because it was really bad.
I mean, you turned around the gang. It was like a freeze frame moment, but you did great. Now, I do want to talk about kind of maybe the challenges you guys are going to face going forward. I noticed in the playoffs in EULCS, sometimes there was a bit of over-eagerness with you and the team as well. So I'd like to know what you, as a top laner, are focusing on within this Fnatic lineup at Worlds.
So the first 2 games we played here at Worlds, I actually learned a lot from, especially the second game, because I feel like once we had that glimpse of hope after winning the fight against IG, we kind of threw it all away on the Baron, right? So I feel like that's something that I recognize myself in. This is exactly the type of play, the type of mistake I would call for. So seeing my team make that and realize you know what? If I'm in the next game, at least I understand now that that is something I can avoid, because it's a mistake I've made millions of times, unfortunately. But I learned from it, and I feel like next time I get to play on stage again, I should be able to avoid that kind of situation and ride the win home after we come back.
Well, you are growing every time we see you on the big stage. Final question. Of course, that big blemish so far is the IG game, especially with the expectations of Fnatic. How are you going to make sure that you beat them in the rematch?
Honestly, I feel like if we shore up our weaknesses in the early game, we should be able to come back, because I feel that despite our huge goal deficit from the early game, we were able to climb back into the game a little bit. It didn't look that way because we threw it away within the next minute, but I feel like if we played the game a little slower after that fight just before the Baron throw, people would have like realized that, you know what, Fnatic could have come back in this game, but I feel like the over-eagerness caught us there and unfortunately threw the game a little bit. But we've been talking about it, we're fixing these issues, and honestly, I think if we come into the mid-game with a 0-0 score, or at least like a 1 to 2k goal deficit maximum, we should be fine, as long as we don't in too hard early.
Okay. Well, fantastic. Always so awesome to hear from you, Bwipo. Thank you well, and good luck in the rest of the tournament. We're going to take a really quick break, but after that, it is TL versus Mad Team. You do not want to miss it. Stick around.